Across the UK, a quiet housing revolution is taking place, one that's changing how people live, connect and find community in our cities. I'm Belinda Coates and this is The Connector. It's called co-living, and at the forefront of this movement is hub living. To help us explore the topic further, I'm joined today by Damien Sharkey, Managing Director at Hub, a developer known for turning bold ideas into purpose-driven projects that make a real social impact. Thank you so much for joining me on the program.
Thank you, Belinda. I'm happy to join this morning.
It's so lovely that you're willing to get up early to meet with me in Australia. I really appreciate it. You've got a lot of great insights to share with us. Damien, for those who might not know Hub, can you start by telling us a bit about the company and the housing mission that drives what you do?
Of course. So Hub are an independent developer focused on transformative high-quality schemes with intentional design, from large rental living-led regeneration projects to retrofit projects in city centres. We currently have just over 10,000 homes either completed or under development across the UK. We're always brand-led, and our values help us stay true to our mission to create living places that move us forward. We are people first. Of course, the projects are primarily for the people that live in them, but through the development process, we're always conscious that we have to build relationships before people. And that relates to our funders, the local authorities, the communities, and the many thousands of people we interact with to realise one of our developments. We describe ourselves as built different. That's just not us as a team in our mindset, but the buildings we create, we always look to be innovative, exemplar design, and we work with, I think, some of the best professionals across the UK. But we're also future made, and what I mean by that is the buildings we design today have to stand the test of time, and they have to be fit for users in the decades ahead. Quite often the buildings we're designing and my team's working on today, people will move into them for several years, so it's really important that our buildings are future made.
I really love your passion, and I really enjoyed our conversation recently in London where you shared quite a few of your stories around creating resilient buildings as you just described. So co-living has really taken off in the UK as a model that bridges the gap between student living and build to rent, or another way of saying it is between toasted sandwiches and cooking a roast chicken. So from your perspective, what makes co-living such an important, or what's so special about co-living?
I think the first thing we've come to realise is co-living, or shared living as it's sometimes now called in the UK, it isn't new. There was an obsession in the last 6 or 7 years, this is a new scary living type. But in fact, it's as old as time. Across all cultures and life stages, people have shared living, they've lived together. So I think we've got to get over the idea that it's a new concept. But what's exciting about it is that it's a great way of accessing housing. It gives people a choice. It gives people certainty in terms of the all-inclusive nature of rental, utility bills. It gives people an opportunity to live in town and city centres at more affordable rates, and they wouldn't otherwise be able to. And it's a great way of addressing loneliness. I think people quite often forget when people come to cities, whether that's for short term, long term, it can be an extremely lonely place to come. It can create a long, long time to create those connections and friendships. And this type of living where you have shared amenity, you encourage people to come together, can help address that. But also from Hub's point of view, our strategy is an ultra-urban living strategy. So we, several years ago identified kind of three issues in UK real estate. You had housing crisis, which I think applies all over the world. We had a climate emergency, but we also had stranded assets. So we had these amazing commercial buildings in city centres that were no longer fit for purpose, and they faced demolition or being left there empty. So there's an opportunity to convert these into living. And we rolled out that strategy 4 years ago. And since then, we've gone on to get planning and start delivering several of those projects. And that's allowing people to live in town and city centres, quite often close to good transport connections, quite often close to good retail offering, cultural offering, and within walking distance of their jobs. So, and co-living in those locations tends to work extremely well, because when we go to retrofit these projects, they come with their challenges. So I think the co-living, the flexibility around it allows us to take what would otherwise be an unused, unloved building and turn it into much needed homes and locations people actually want to live.
And there's a lot of innovation there. So you're not only bringing people back into the cities where they're surrounded by transport and access to all the things they need, you're creating opportunities for people to, more folks to get into homes with affordable solutions and solving the isolation. I was certainly impressed by the co-living developments that I toured recently when I was in London. And Hub's been delivering something really special that I'd love you to tell us a little bit about. So Hub is currently delivering a major co-living project that includes 60 new homes for vulnerable women in partnership with Women's Pioneer Housing. It's a really powerful initiative, and I'd love you to share how this came about and what Hub Living brought to the table to make this happen.
Yes, of course. I think there's a number of really exciting aspects to our development. It's called Yard House, and it's based in White City in West London. It's a scheme, it's a site that was owned by Women's Pioneer Housing, who are a charity and a housing association focusing on the delivery of housing for vulnerable women. They had a site in a phenomenal location, very close to an opportunity area within the borough of Hammersmith and Fulham. And when they initially approached us, they had an idea of adding a few additional floors to the existing building. But in collaboration with us and one of our architects, they came to the realization, actually, it should be a comprehensive new development. But because of procurement rules here in the UK, we had to go through a public procurement process. So we had to compete with a number of other developers and contractors. And thankfully, at the end of that process, we were selected as Women Pioneers Housing Development Partner. One of the primary reasons we were selected was because of co-living. We proposed co-living as a use class that would sit comfortably alongside 60 social homes for vulnerable women. And that idea of shared amenity, addressing loneliness, a sense of community. So after the planning process, we are now on site building 209 co-living homes and 60 social homes for vulnerable women. This was one of the first properly institutional funded co-living developments in the UK. So the scheme was funded by CDL, City Development Limited, who is a Singaporean funder, and they funded that scheme with us 18 months ago, and it will complete next year. We're extremely excited to complete that development. We think it's it'll be an excellent example of a successful co-living development, but also a really good example of where public-private partnerships can work together. And quite often, there's this misconception that us as developers can achieve everything on our own, but this is an example where you had a charity and a housing association owning a very valuable piece of land, but didn't have the funds to unlock its potential or develop their much-needed social housing. But we were able to deliver all of that in turn for them granting us a long lease on a part of the site to deliver 209 co-living homes.
It's an exceptional story, and I think globally we're really seeing that public-private partnerships, or partnerships generally between private and public and with community, is really making a difference. And it's such a beautiful story. You're really setting a benchmark that other places really need to look towards, and thank you so much for sharing that. And also it does appear that co-living can be a real antidote to loneliness. And I think you've shared it before, and you've just shared it with that story too, that it's able to serve people outside the typical 21 to 27-year-old demographic. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
I think one of the challenges to the development of co-living here in the UK is the misconception that co-living is only for young professionals. So as we entered into generation one of co-living a decade ago, everyone assumed it was just 21 to 25-year-olds that live in these developments. But as we're now delivering generation two of co-living, we're seeing the average age of people living in these co-living developments being between 26 and 45 years of age. We're seeing people live in these developments that have been through divorce, have lost a partner, are new to cities. People come and stay 3-4 nights a week. People stay for years. So the sorts of co-living developments we're designing now as we enter into the third generation of co-living developments has to ensure there's that flexibility to cater for all. It also means we're creating true communities, and we're not creating homes just for young professionals. Of course, location-wise, it will depend on the demographic. But I think what's really important is we're seeing a range of people from a range of backgrounds and a range of ages stay in these developments.
And for our viewers, can you tell us a little bit about some of the amenities that come with the co-living? Because they're quite impressive.
Yeah, they are. And one of the things that sometimes we're criticised of here in the UK, in rental in general, not just co-living, is an amenity arms race. We all compete with each other to deliver the best and the biggest amenity. Hub's approach is it's not about the size of the amenity, it's about the quality of the amenity. But the sorts of amenity we're seeing is co-working element is absolutely essential in our co-living developments. The gym is absolutely essential, but we're seeing shared kitchens, TV rooms, cinema rooms, games rooms, quite often bowling alleys. And every scheme is slightly different, but I think as we enter into the third generation of co-living and considering affordability of these schemes, it's absolutely essential that we deliver the essential amenity and deliver it really well, rather than delivering lots of amenity that makes these buildings more expensive to operate and in turn makes them too expensive quite often for people to live in.
I'm a big supporter and I love your stories and the passion that you share. How supportive is the UK's planning system when it comes to co-living?
I think it's mixed. We've come a long way in our 7-year journey here at Hub and Co-living. When we started 7 years ago, it was fair to say that 99% of local authorities viewed co-living as a negative. They did not see it as proper housing. However, where we are today, particularly in London, with the help of the Greater London Authority and their guidance, it's now accepted in quite a lot of London boroughs. And where when I say accepted, sometimes it's accepted on the basis that it acts as a catalyst for other types of housing or other types of uses. So quite often is an acknowledgement in local authorities here in London that if they allow a co-living development, particularly at the moment when the viability of traditional built-to-rent or market sale homes is extremely challenging, the co-living allows the development of social housing. It allows the delivery of NHS facilities. It allows the delivery of education, retail, etc. So we've come a long way, but I think the education of co-living still needs to continue with lots of local authorities, especially when we get outside of London. It's still very much misunderstood, in our opinion, in regional cities, and quite often it's forced down a route of built-to-rent. So you end up with not a proper co-living development, not a proper built-to-rent development. It's somewhere between the two. So in summary, we've come a long way, but we've got a long way to go.
Thank you so much. You've definitely educated us on the benefits of co-living as an antidote to loneliness, and keep the education up. We love what you do. Thanks for joining us. This program has been brought to you by Harper. This is Tika, and we'll be right back.